Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Text as we look at the scripture for this coming Sunday, November 9th, which comes from the Gospel of Luke in the 20th chapter. This is the 22nd Sunday after Pentecost. We are nearing the end of the kind of lectionary year, as actually, sorry to say, Advent is only 4 weeks away. Always at the end of the lectionary year, you hear and have more scripture texts talking about the resurrection or the life to come or the end times. And so here we jump to Luke 20, which is really a discourse, a challenge text between the religious leaders of the day and Jesus about what would the resurrection life be like. So I invite you to light a candle, let Christ's presence be in your midst, and open up your Bible to Luke chapter 20, verses 27 through 38. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up the child for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman and died childless. The second and the third married her, and so the same way all 7 died childless. Finally the woman also died. So in the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had all married her. Jesus said to them, those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, and those who are considered worthy of a place in the age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore because they're like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Now he is God, not of the dead, but of the living. For to him all of them are alive. Here ends the reading. So this obviously can feel like a really disjuncted or obscure text with a really bizarre analogy of a woman being married 7 times, and what is her life in heaven going to be like with this cacophony of marriages and relationships, which is not, of course, the purpose of the text or the focus of Jesus. But it was an entrapment. You need to understand what is happening in this context. And so historically, understand that in Luke, Jesus has been driving to Jerusalem and the whole way has been weeping for the children of Jerusalem because they have not come to believe in his word or believe in him and who he could be. And so he goes into Jerusalem to much fanfare, being claimed as the one who comes in the name of the Lord. And while he is there, he drives out the money changers from the temple and calls upon the people you've changed my father's house into a den of thieves. And he doesn't go there and worship. He sets up shop and starts teaching. And Luke says, every day he went and taught in the temple, and his opponents sought opportunities in which to kill him. That's the setting. So what is happening is Jesus every day setting up shop and teaching in the temple as the authority. So what would you expect? But those who were responsible for the temple, the Sadducees, they were the rulers of the temple and temple law. They are the ones now coming to challenge him. The Pharisees, the other group of Jewish leaders, they were upholders of the law of the Jewish tradition. So Sadducees and Pharisees didn't necessarily get along or agree with one another. The Sadducees only believed in the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch, or the first 5 books of the Bible, and they did not believe in the resurrection. They believed that God's kingdom, God was going to bring his kingdom to earth. Okay, the Pharisees believed in all the prophets, all the other books of the Old Testament, and the promises of a Messiah coming to bring about the resurrection and bring about the kingdom. So they believe two different things. So here you have Jesus teaching and the Sadducees, only believing the first 5 books, not in the resurrection, trying to show, entrap Jesus in his own lessons, and by entrapping him, also put down the Pharisees by saying, look how idiotic the idea of a resurrection could be. So what do the Sadducees raise? They raise the question of the levirate marriage, which is the law that from Deuteronomy, that if it was meant to preserve and care for widows or one's family name. So if a gentleman died and the woman was left childless, the brother would need to marry her to protect and provide for her and make sure that she remained in the family name and was not a cast out but included. And so they take that law into the extreme to show how foolish it would be to extend that into, what would the resurrected life be then if we're to live by these laws that they were trying to show. So how does Jesus respond? He doesn't fall into the trap, obviously, as Jesus was more astute and actually stunned the Sadducees into silence by showing their failure to understand what resurrected life would be, that it would be very different from this life. You can't impose the traditions of this world onto the resurrected life. Secondly, he just demonstrates their own failure to recognize his Moses admission to the resurrection. If they're only going to believe in the first 5 books of the Bible and say, well, resurrection isn't shown in there, he shows that through Exodus 3, the story of Moses in the burning bush, that in that God declares, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not I was the God of those people, but I am still the God of them. And they're implying in present tense Hebrew, they're alive. So he's trying to show the Sadducees their own hypocrisy in not understanding Scripture. So that's all happening in the background. In this day, in this text, looking at what is the resurrected life. So if we're in this so what does this mean for us? If we're in this season of the end of the liturgical year in preparation for Advent, and we're looking at, all these scripture texts are looking at what is the resurrected life and exploring that concept in contemporary language. What are our opinions about the resurrected life? What is heaven going to be like? And this speaks to that in 2 ways. One, that we can't limit our imagination of what the resurrected life can be by the life we are experiencing now. It's kind of like, when you were growing up, you couldn't imagine living with the technology that you have today. We can't imagine what the resurrected life will ultimately be. Further, we don't know what relationships will be like specifically, and this text doesn't speak to that, other than we will be related, we will be children of the resurrection. Secondly, there's a Greek kind of you could say notion about immortality and resurrection, and a difference, that immortality is the spirit never dies. The spirit is a part of us, and the spirit, when we die, lives on, and that is what is in the resurrected life. Jesus is showing here that the resurrected life is the bodily resurrection. That's what we say in the Apostles' Creed. We believe in the resurrection of the body and the life to come. And looks at Corinthians 15. The whole person, not just some wispy essence of them, is what God promises to redeem and bring into relationship, so that he declares, and we look at verse 36, we cannot die when we are followers of Jesus, because we are like angels. We are children of God, being children of the resurrection. So there's another concept of what you could say concept, or troubling concept, for us to kind of wrestle with and chew on and think about as we're looking at this, the end of the year and the culmination of the story of Jesus. So, where will we go with this on Sunday? We shall see. I invite you to come, and we hope to see you in worship. Hope to see you at the Scandinavian Festival on Saturday, and join us for a celebration weekend. As we are gathered by a great cloud of witnesses, which we lifted up last week, we now enter into the reality of what does that mean for us today. Peace to you this week.